Okay, this will be an animation tutorial and I'm going to show you how to animate a walk cycle in Flash using all the Flash tools. Basically you can create this entire thing just by working inside Flash. You didn't have to do a single drawing. So this is what it looks like, or should look like if you do it right. And it's a very simple walk. It's the classic Preston Blair animation school walk cycle, and it's all done with motion tweening and shape tweening and some basic symbol work. That's it. So just a quick introduction. This is my website, idleworm.com. Been up since 2000, and previously I've done some animation pages, how-tos. This is the bouncing ball page, which should come in handy for anybody starting out, and a bit more advanced, the lesson number 2, excuse me, the walk cycle. And in this lesson walked people through how to do, again, the basic standard walk, this time doing it frame by frame by hand if you were going to be a traditional animator, which is what I used to be. So how to move it across the screen, how to animate in place, and the basic 4 major key poses of a walk cycle: contact, recoil, passing, and high point. So I may return to this at some point during the discussion just to use it as an illustration for how we're going to do the rest. Before we start, there is, if you're working in Flash MX 2004 or higher, there is an extension that would be very useful. It'll save you a lot of pain. It's called Frame Edit, and it's from a site called toonmonkey.com, TOONMONKEY. And this guy has a bunch of fantastic free extensions that you can download and install for Flash. And Frame Edit's going to be very important. There are several others you might want to look through. I like Layer Color, also very handy, so we'll talk more about them later. Anyway, we'll go back to Flash and proper look now at the walks. And the one on the bottom was the way I animated it in place. It's a lot easier to do it like that. And then the one on top, I simply motion tween the character across the screen. And the thing to notice, I guess, watch the feet. They plant really firm. They're not sliding or slipping, which is probably one of the most common problems a lot of people have when they begin to scale or motion tween a walk cycle across the screen. So that's pretty much that. And this is pre-animated. I did that earlier. So what I'm going to do now is show you the same rig without any animation, and I'm going to animate, hopefully, the walk cycle again, second time around, without too many problems. So I've made a duplicate scene, and this is the rig. Now the way I rig a character isn't very mysterious. This is an extremely simple character layout. It's all on layers. Let me show you the outline structure. I'll move the timeline now because I'm going to go into I want to maximize the amount of screen real estate I've got. And a lot of people, when they animate, don't lay out their timelines and windows very efficiently, so it's very important that you basically give yourself as much room as possible. So I also notice a lot of people don't worry about outline colors. They just allow Flash to assign random colors. I like to have some kind of structure because I do a lot of work in outline. So I like to use color codes, which these are what I find pleasing to look at. Green signals that it's the right side of the body. Blue for the left, kind of a grayish blue, turquoise color for the body. And green and blue again for the right and left feet respectively, and then a creamy color for the head. Now I can tunnel into any of these symbols, and I maintain, just at least for the purpose of this class, the same color pattern, just so you can see the whole the layering and how it works. This is one layer for the upper arm, and I have a separate layer for the lower arm, and that is a symbol. That's going to do motion tweening at some point, maybe not, we'll see. So all to notice too, the fingers are all on different layers. So if I want, not that I will, but I could manipulate the fingers individually as well. So that's about as fancy as this rig gets. Same thing goes for the legs. So I'm going to be able to move these around and create different poses, hopefully without too much problems. So that's the rig. It's very straightforward. The other thing to notice will be naming conventions. Very religious about naming and structuring folders. So in this example, I've called it body B. That's it. That's the direction he's facing in. A is straight out, and B is to the side, and C is profile, and so on. I'll talk more about that in other classes. Anyway, so we got BD for body, B. Keep these names short because the shorter they are, the more than it'll fit here when you start tunneling into nested symbols. So same thing goes for the components. I've named them very simply: arm and then L for left, arm right for right, leg L, so on. This asterisk means it's a comp. It means there's going to be multiple animations going on inside the clip. I also use the senior clips outside of this folder. This folder consists of things that I consider secondary. The primary will be the bodies and the heads, although the heads don't do much in this example, but the bodies are certainly on a different level of importance than, let's say, the arm. So that's pretty much as we need for the library right now. And now I'm going to open, actually I'll just work in this mode for the moment. I think this should be enough for now. So let's see, we've got two scenes, the original one with the reference which is already done, and now the new one, walk 2. So we're going to go into walk 2, and it's going to be a classic walk cycle. I'm on 24 frames per second. I'm going to make this a graphic so I can then watch it play on the outer clip. Let's see, play once, and it'll be 24 frames long. Excuse me. And so that'll be a typical cycle, so it'll go from frame 1 through 25, which is frame 1 repeated. So the actual cycle itself will be from 1 through 24. Now to go back to the original lesson, we've got the 4 main poses. I'm going to stop that from looping so it doesn't mess up our frame rate. So the classic start pose, contact, and that's the most important pose in the walk cycle. And we work from the contact pose into the contact pose. And once you determine your contact pose, that's pretty much your walk cycle's character and personality determined. You're not going to be able to do drastic alterations in these poses. Everything works around contacts, and the reason why is because the feet are at their most extreme positions relative to the character. So it makes most sense to build your walk around the contact pose, not the recoil and the high points. I know some people do that. I don't know how. You can block out an entire character's walk through an environment just by contact to contact to contact. And just to scroll down, I believe there might be an illustration of something along those, like as for example here, you can see once you determine the contact placements, pretty much the entire walk is laid out. Here we go. So you know from contact 1 to contact 2 exactly where all the secondary keyframes and all the in-betweens are going to go in this case here. So back to the Flash. So we have to build our contact pose. I'm going to start this with, let me get rid of that. I'm going to start this with the well, we need a guideline for the feet. That's kind of important. So plop that, I'm going to put snap on so we get it properly straight. And these lines should go more or less where you think the heel is going to be. We could change this later if this doesn't quite work. So there's our guidelines, and let's guide that out so it doesn't interfere with anything. I'll padlock it so I don't accidentally select it while I'm moving the character. Okay, now we build the contact pose, which again, just as a reminder, it looks like this. And I'm going to do this one first. I think it makes more sense maybe to do it with the right foot leading the action. I don't think it really matters, but I like to be picky. So we'll take the right, and it's going to be something like that. I'm not going to worry too much. Snap shouldn't really be on for this part. You want the freedom to be able to move this smoothly. So we want counter pose. I've nested the hand inside the arm. That'll simplify life a good bit. So then we, if the right foot is forward, of course the right arm is back, and vice versa on the legs. So you don't want to move them both the same way. I've seen it done. So here we go. And the main thing here at the moment is I'm not going to worry about giving this little guy personality or making him happy or sad. This is basically just a mechanical walkthrough, and that's already a fairly believable contact pose. Maybe the arm's a little bit too far back. This is annoying. I'm going to switch snap a line off. It really isn't needed for this kind of work. So let's bring that arm in a little bit, make it look a little more natural, and seems to be a nice line of action on the legs to the skull. It looks okay to me, so we can live with this. Okay, that's going to be our start pose and our stop pose. So remember, we're going from our contact pose here, back into contact here, and that'll complete the cycle. And that means that the next contact pose will be on number 13. And if you're not sure about the mathematics, just grab these, hold down the Alt key, drag that, and our numbers are solid. Sometimes I like to use labels for this, because labels will allow us to make little notes. So I'll put down like a C for contact as a little reminder so that we don't get lost in here. Easy to do. Now I'm going to move the timeline to the top. It's incredibly annoying. It keeps interfering with my work in the properties panel. That's ridiculous. So thank you, Microsoft. Anyway, we are now going to drop in our second keyframe here, and then our next contact pose will be here. And it's a simple matter now of taking the contact and reversing the arms, legs, and so that we have the 1-2 combination. So like to have the reference for it. These really have to be almost mirrors of one another. So we're going to make a reference layer here. I've just copied and pasted all the layers onto a new single layer, and that's going to be a reference. Padlock that, and then reactivate this. We'll go into outline mode. This is where outline mode comes in very handy. So now we will start, and this can be confusing, so easiest thing to do sometimes, at least for the purpose of demonstration, just pull everything away from the body, and now we can see a bit closer what we're doing. So what we want to do is move the green, which was on the right, forward, and move it to the other side, and actually move it back, my mistake, to here. So there we go. Don't worry too much about changing the form of the foot just yet. We have to do as much as we possibly can without deforming anything. The deforming things using shape tweens is a secondary step. We have to use motion tweening initially as much as possible, and as shape tweening is like a bit of a interesting tool. It can do very powerful things, but you do not want to make it do more than it's really designed to do. So let's switch off that and see what we've got. This might be a little bit out of sync, and it is. So that's one of the difficulties of working in Outline. So I've accidentally moved that foot too far that way. So let's just do this. Now we're getting it. So this foot that was now green will hopefully more or less look the same on this side. These two poses have to have the same or basic orientations for each body part. Otherwise, if it's asymmetrical, things might seem to be off a little bit, like they're limping, and in fact it just seems like the blue leg or the left leg isn't quite matching the position of the other. It seems to be stretched or a little bit too much under stress. I'm not sure. So let's just pull it in, make it look a little less extreme. And just by toggling back and forth with the numeric arrow keys, you can begin playing with this until you get it reasonably close. This is a time in the walk cycle that I think is really critical. And actually, let's just tweak that rig on that comp there. So, because any mistakes here are going to be propagated throughout every keyframe. All the other keys in here will take that mistake and just replicate it, and you'll have a very hard time fixing it. So this really is critical that you do not mess this part up. So for example, this orientation of that arm is not being matched by this, and this is probably something as a result of the comps. If you look at the angles on the green and the blue, they're slightly different. Not too bad, but there is a difference there between them. So the trick will be to try to make these look as similar as possible, hopefully without redrawing them too much, although we can do that if we have to. So that's not too bad. I'm still not entirely happy with it, so let's just bring that back a little bit and now compare them again.